Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is Scott Malone, yet another revert to the faith. I cannot wait to get into Scott's story. It's got many, many twists and turns, like so many other reversion stories. And Scott, I want to first welcome you to the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Great to
Um,
see you. So why don't we start at the beginning, Scott? How were you raised? What's the beginning of your faith journey?
well, I guess my faith journey began when I was a child. I was raised in a good Christian home. I was baptized in the Catholic Church when I was an infant, like 20, 18 days after my birth. And my parents, my parents came from large families as well. My mother comes from a family of 15. Her mother was actually Catholic, so she required all their children to be baptized in the Catholic Church. Evidently, I think it's in the Catholic, but she required all of them to be baptized. My father was born into a really devout Catholic family. Anyways, this leads up to 19 when I was 6 years old. My parents decided to leave the Catholic Church and join the Pentecostal church. Getting into the Pentecostal movement. We started attending on a church about 45 minutes from home here. I grew up in rural Minnesota. I was raised on a dairy farm. My parents, my dad milked cows for until 2005, and my eldest brother took over for him. And he, anyways, getting back to 1986, my parents left the church, and anyway,
Do you know why they left the church?
I'm still having a hard time piecing it together.
Sure.
Like I was saying, my parents left the church, and five of my uncles also left the church. Five of his brothers, my dad's brothers. No, they all kind of got, I guess, sucked into the whole Pentecostal movement. That's all I can really dig out of it. It was a battle for my grandpa. My grandpa really struggled with my uncles and my dad leaving the church. My grandpa, I really love my grandpa. My parents left the church when I was 6, and I was raised in the Assembly of God church. Basically, my parents founded the Assembly of God. It was a Pentecostal church that was similar to the church that was 45 minutes away. And they found a local Assembly of God, which they became a part of. And I was raised in there until I was about 15 years old. And my parents left the Pentecostal Assembly of God church and became a part of this Baptist oriented church. Um, it's not really Baptist, but it had the fundamental kind of viewpoint.
Sure.
I was saying, Marie, I was raised in a Christian home. I mean, they tried instilling good Christian values, everything. I mean, it was I had no argument with that. And then when I was 16 years old, I was in a traumatic dirt bike accident. That took things into quite a tailspin. Um, my whole family suffered from it. I suffered from it. Anyways, I was in a traumatic dirt bike accident. I bought the dirt bike 3 days um before it happened on my birthday, October 8th, 1996. I was going out to get my dad for chores on October 11th, 1996. I was getting dusk out, and that's why I was going out to get him to see when he would be coming in for chores, because we were chopping corn at that time. He was driving his tractor up the ditch coming up because he was realizing it was getting late. And I didn't see him coming in the ditch because it was dusk out. And Anyways, I hit him going 40 miles an hour, and it was bad. I mean, my brother knew it was bad. My brother was on the track with him, my second eldest brother. And he got off and he was screaming. He knew it was bad, and they heard him like screaming like 6 miles away. It was bad. My dad was got off the track and he knew it was bad as well, and he started praying and he tried feeling for a pulse, breath, nothing was there. And I was dead for a couple minutes. And I'll come back to this later in life or later in my testimony, but I was my life came back. I came back to life 2 minutes later, about, and there was a local truck driver that was driving by, and he saw me in the ditch with my dad. He knew it was a bad accident. He got on the CB, called called 911 or whatever they do on the CB. They radioed in, and anyways, the local paramedics came, and they were at a homecoming game in my hometown. They brought me to a local hospital, the hospital where I was born at. Um, and they knew they couldn't do nothing with me because I was a severe case. And they airlifted me down to Robbinsdale, Minnesota, which is down by Minneapolis. And there they kind of diagnosed me with all my issues. My pelvis was fractured in 12 places, my kneecap was shattered, my spleen was torn, my liver was torn, my lungs were, one was collapsed, one was lacerated, a bunch of issues. I fractured my skull, a bunch of other injuries, and they found that I had a ruptured bladder. They thought it was bad, but they thought, well, I'm not really to the point of giving up hope. But anyways, they stabilized me there, and they knew they couldn't do anything with my hip, so they were searching out for local orthopedic surgeons that could help me with my hip. And they came up with that there was a leading orthopedic doctor that was making his rounds to Hennepin County Medical Center. That was in Minneapolis, so they transferred me a week after my accident, and during the whole week I was losing a lot of blood, and they couldn't figure out where I was losing this blood from. And anyways, I didn't handle the transport to Hennepin County Medical Center that well. That night my dad started noticing my abdomen was expanded. And there's just blood, they couldn't figure out what was going on. Anyway, so they decided to open up my abdomen and see what's going on. And when they did that, they found that gangrene set in. And they noticed, and I guess they found that 95% of my small bowel was dead. And my 2/3 of my large intestine was faring too ill. I don't know if that was totally removed as well. I don't know that. That's something I don't know. God knows, but wasn't recorded in my notes, but or the medical notes. But anyways, it didn't. Even after this, they knew it was bad, and they during this operation they found that I had a second artery that was feeding the small intestine I had remaining, the 25 centimeters of small bowel. And they said that this is something that only happens to 1 in 1,000,000 people. The second artery feeding your larynx, feeding your intestines. And they knew it was a kind of a God thing right away. Even the medical staff knew this. Anyways, all my uncles and aunts, I believe, came down, and the medical staff, they gave me like a less than 5% chance of life, even after they found this second artery. it was bad. And anyways, yeah, it's a miracle I'm alive, for one, just a straight up miracle. I was in the hospital 6 months straight, flat on my back for 5 months because they couldn't do anything with my hips, so they put me in what they call medical traction, with weights on the end of the bed hanging, waiting for my hip to heal correctly. I couldn't move for 5 months. I couldn't get out of bed. Um, anyways, in my knee, they decided they couldn't do anything with my knee because I had all this extensive internal injuries. They couldn't. I was kind of like a medical case where they were scared to do anything, like surgeries or anything. So they allow my knee to heal, my kneecap to heal. And that was kind of a miracle in that. That's all. I mean, it's it's not exactly perfect, but it's functional in some sense. My hip was, like I was saying, that I should, that's another thing that was kind of a miracle too, is my hip kind of healed on itself, kind of was it able to move on its own. It was, it's almost like it was fused, not medically fused, but it was or naturally fused. It's I have a natural fusion. Basically, I have 25% mobility in my hip. Anyways, so I was able to get around after the 6 or 5 months. I was actually started able to get in a PT. They transferred me to the PT unit in the ACMC. I was in Due to my extensive abdominal issues, they kept my abdomen open for 5 months. They kept it open because they were so afraid that I had other issues. It's just a lot. Anyways, I won't get into all that.
How I have to ask you, Scott, how aware were you of all of this in the moment?
I was phasing in and out. They had me on morphine, stuff that shouldn't normally knock you totally out, but I don't know why I can kind of pull out of morphine. I can pull out of different drugs. I mean, it's just something else. Anyways, they strapped me to the bed for a good 2 months because I was pulling out. I pulled out a tube one time. It was bad. Um, the pain was bad. I could feel it. For 2 months, I can't remember, but around November 11th, after that, I was transferred to their at HCM. So I was transferred to their burn unit because that's the most sterile unit in the hospital because I had an open abdomen and all these other medical issues. They figured, well, but I'm in the most sanitary unit there is in the hospital. Anyway, and that's another thing. I was basically my mother, I mean, my family is beautiful. I mean, I come from a great family. Um, my mother stayed down with me for almost the whole time. She would come up on weekends to visit my dad on weekends, but then for that 5 months, she was pretty much by my side the whole time. And anyways, I was in the rehab unit and at the HCMC. And anyways, during that time, they were expecting me to be sent home on what is called parental nutrition, um, which is IV nutrition. And IV nutrition is fed to it through a medical port in my chest. Anyways, they're expecting me to go home on this, but evidently I was well enough that they decided to take me off of the TPN and let me go home without being on TPN. And they kept track of my blood work for about a week, for about a year afterwards. They kept track. But then after that, They didn't keep track of it for 15 years, my total blood work that I needed. That's gonna come back to that later. But anyways, I was sent home. I still they skin grafted my abdomen shut. That was just kind of like a temporary way of getting me closing my abdomen. There's just a bunch of issues that are involved with that. I was like during this time I didn't have schooling at all. And in the accident, like I said, I had this fractured skull brain injury. My brain, anyways, they decided to test me for brain function issues. They tested me in the hospital about 2 months afterward, and they found that my brain wasn't affected. I was actually testing out my math scores, my abstract math scores were testing out as a person that with a secondary education, and I was 16 years old. So it's not like my brain was messed up at all. I don't want to go bragging or anything about that. This was a traumatic deal. I mean, it wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, it was mental, it was everything. I couldn't speak, well, I didn't really speak with my friends for 6 months straight, and even when I was back home, I couldn't experience much of the same things my friends were experiencing. Anyways, and this threw me into quite the depressive state, and I was experiencing PTSD. It was bad. Anyways, when I got out of the hospital, I was allowed to be sent home 6 months after, and I fell into drug use. Well, I shouldn't say drug use, alcohol, basically. I picked up smoking, and I picked up a bunch of bad habits to kind of dull the PTSD that I was experiencing. And this lasted for a good 5 years after my accident, almost 6, 7 years. Anyways, getting back to my whole experiences, I graduated with my class. I also, in order to do that, I was going to school full time and also taking up some classes at a local alternative learning center. I was picking up classes there to make up credits to graduate with my class. And I was able to graduate with my class. And I was really good with art. That's one thing I wanted to pursue as I decided, well, graduating with my class, and then I decided, well, with all the medical issues, I wasn't able to obtain all my math credits, everything to up to level 2 in order to attend a local state college or a university. So I decided to attend a local community college to obtain my math credits that way in order to make it into a university because I wanted to obtain a degree in fine arts, and I was really good with ceramics. I made that poppy at me, anyways. I like I love ceramics, and so I decided at the Central Lakes College to pursue a degree in ceramics. See what university out there offered a degree in ceramics, a bachelor's of fine arts degree in ceramics. So I decided to I found one at Moorhead State University, Minnesota State University, Moorhead. Anyways, they switched names during the time I was there. I was really good with ceramics. I was an A+ art student basically, if I really put my mind to it. I was working be almost full time at the time, and I was in school full time, so that put a lot of my mentally and time wise and all this, because there's a lot of time gets put in the art, and plus my other credits I need to obtain in order to graduate, having to work. Um, Anyways, I was an A plus art student. I obtained many A pluses, A pluses in my art classes. Um, I was good at ceramics, and my professor there noticed this, and he brought up to me a program that University of Minnesota would allow me to attend their program, the ceramics program at the University of Minnesota down in Minneapolis, for the same charge or same cost or tuition fees that Morehead State would charge. And he brought this up to me, and I said, I'll think about it. And he's like, and then I came back to him again. Anyways, this was an ongoing discussion, and he said, well, you can be a small fish in a big pond, referring to MSUM, or you can be a little fish in a big pond at the University of Minnesota. Because he noticed I was really good with ceramics. So he was like, he wanted me to pursue it, and he figured I was good enough to pursue this. And at this time, also, there was a bunch of personal issues, anyways, personal experiences. Anyways, I was put in my application, everything was approved. I was set to go. I had all my classes registered at the University of Minnesota. Also, I want to include that the University of Minnesota is well known for the ceramics program in the United States. They're one of the top colleges. We have pretty well-known people in Minnesota, pretty well-known artists in Minnesota about with fine arts and ceramics. So he, I, I was, I had all my classes out there, and then I also, like I was saying, there's a spiritual side of this too. I had a spiritual encounter with God as well. There's a lot of personal issues involved with this, but anyways, I was looking for a church. During this time, I also, I guess getting back to the spiritual experience, I wanted to raise a family in a godly household. So I decided, well, I better get right with God. I needed to start pursuing God with my whole heart in this. Um, Hopefully he can help me with my PTSD and all this stuff. Anyway, so I decided to quit smoking. Um, like I said, I want to raise a family in a household. So I started attending a local. I was in Moorhead. I lived in West Fargo at the time, and I uh, I decided to my cousin. I lived with my cousin at the time when I was in West Fargo, and he wanted to sign up for summer classes at the NDSU because he was pursuing a career in law enforcement at this time. He was looking for classes for summer school, and I was sitting outside waiting for him on a bench, and this guy came up to me, and he said, God wants me to talk to you. And anyways, on my way during that week, I was praying to God after I had this thing of turning my life back over to God. I was like, well, I'm going to go back to the whole party scene. I'm going to just give it all up and go after that. But if you don't show me anything within the next whatever time period, I don't know, but within soon, this person came up to me and he said, God wants me to talk to you. And we got talking, and he invited me to a local charismatic group called Chi Alpha. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's in the Assembly of God. It's a college ministry with the Assembly of God.
Mm.
Anyways, I was kind of reintroduced to God's mercy at that time. He wanted to use me to reach out to the world at this time. And I figured, well, I'm gonna follow along with him. I'm gonna do it his way. And so I started attending Chi Alpha, started falling in love with God again, and I ran into some theological issues along this way as well. Anyways,
I, you don't have to go too far into it, but theological issues relative to you remembering things as a child, or what were you
well, the
comparing
thing, so
those?
I mean, this before my experience with the sky, I was attending a UPC church, a Pentecostal oneness only church, and they confronted me on a whole issue of the Trinitarian God, and that kind of got me thinking about the whole theology of the Trinity because they were oneness only church. I don't know if you know about the
Oh yeah,
UPC,
oh yeah.
um, and that kind of opened me up to the whole theological conundrum of the Protestant movement. Anyways, I this is a wording I didn't really understand. Anyways, this is something I was also dealing with is these theological issues. But the whole Trinity, the whole baptism, if there's baptism, John 3:3, you got baptized in water and spirit. It's a bunch of issues that were involved theologically, and this is where I had this experience with this guy. I was really disappointed with God at this time because I was dating this one girl, and we kind of ended bad in a bad way. That threw me for a more emotional therapist, man. And anyways, I got involved with this Chi Alpha. I don't know if that answered your question, but
It does.
anyways, this had kind of opened me up to the whole theological issues in the Protestant community because one church was teaching one thing.
Yeah.
My dad was saying one thing because it was at the Assembly of God. The Assembly of God believed in the Trinitarian God. And the UPC believed in Jesus only, and it's anyways, it exposed me to the mess that was in Christianity at this time. And I fell on the side of the Trinitarians. I was a Trinitarian at heart. That's one of my graces, my baptism. I do believe in that. Once you're baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, you have this grace given to you. And this was a grace that carried me through this. I was dealing with all this, and I was thinking of going to the, University of Minnesota, and I had this experience with God. Decided, well, I'm going to pursue God and what He wants me to do. And I was attending this Chi Alpha at the time as well. Um, and I was kind of exposed to the whole youth ministry. I got involved with the youth ministry at Assembly of God, a large Assembly of God in Fargo. And the youth minister told me, well, you should maybe start thinking about youth ministry. And he recommended me to go to either to a college, a Assembly of God college in um, North Dakota there, or go to the North Central University down in Minneapolis. And he also brought up a thing, a mailing kind of educational arm of the Assembly of God called Global University. I don't know if you've heard of Global University.
No.
I decided to go the whole Berean route and to the Global University route of that. I decided to move back home. I was thinking about my experience in my accident. This is all something that's been in my brain for since my accident, about the whole my at that time, during that time, I started thinking about how I entered heaven. Well, because I remember telling my mom in the hospital, I went into heaven going to the east. It's that I'll get back to that in a little bit. But anyways, I was thinking about all this. Anyways, and I want to get trained right. I knew my way how I learned. I learned in a community class setting, not in a male and private setting at the time. So I decided to look for college, and I decided with North Central University down Minneapolis, Minnesota. They were a college that offered youth ministry classes because I was interested in youth ministry at this time because I wanted to help out kids. I decided to go to North Central University, NCU, and the first year there was pretty good. I kind of was learning the whole Pentecostal way of Christianity. And then in 2006, I'm about 45, so this is not a one-time deal. Or anyways,
Scott,
I
Scott, you look 30, just so you know. So
I'm 45 almost. Anyways, I was attending North Central University, and I began North Central University in fall of 2004. And during this time, I also got involved with the local church that was reaching out to the drug addicted, the social ills of society, everything from homelessness to drug addiction, prostitution, uh, every social, basically, because it's a large community in Minneapolis, it's a large city. Anyway, so I got involved with this because I saw a need. I saw a need there, and I felt no one was helping out these people. I just took it upon myself to get involved with this ministry. I became, first of all, I became their discipleship director and for the youth. Um, During this time, I was at North Central University. During this time, I also in 2006 there was I don't know if you know anything about Soul Force. It's a homosexual LGBTQ community that throws rallies for colleges that don't allow homosexuality in their colleges.
mm.
I don't know what their whole understanding of this. Anyways, they're throwing all this stuff out there about the Bible teaches this, and it was contrary to what I was brought up with. It's the whole arsenic noi, um, the Greek word about the homosexual. And there was churches that were actually teaching this down in Minneapolis, that it wasn't really prohibiting homosexuality. Um, anyway, so this threw me into a whole conundrum of who's right in the Protestant community about this. Anyways, in the semester prior to that, in the spring of 2005, I believe, I had a course at North Central University that brought up the whole issue of the contraception. Um, uh, the instructor told me that the Assembly of God, at first they didn't allow their congregants to have any contraception, any medical contraception. Anyways, and this was all deferred in 1940, I believe, in the Assembly of God. And I got thinking, why would they switch this? It just, all this curiosity that was welling up with me kind of flowed into 2006 and this whole homosexuality rally was going on, I came, during this, I was meditating on what's the difference between the homosexual marriage and the marriage that I'm familiar with, a marriage between a man and a woman. And them are the only man and woman. That's the only marriage that's valid and all that. But I got thinking, what's the difference? Because I saw in the homosexual marriage that they loved each other. What's the difference between their love and natural love between a man and a woman? What's the difference? What's the only thing that separates the two? It's the whole thought concept of procreation. Because a man and man can't procreate, a woman and woman can't procreate, only a man and a woman can procreate. That's what makes the marriage valid. Is their whole openness to procreation. Anyways, that gets to that subject. I also in 2006, in the spring of 2005, in the fall of 2006, I was, I took my first Greek class and we learned all the foundations of Greek. And then in spring of 2006, during the same time, we kind of delved into the scriptures, the whole Gospels, the New Testament of the Greek, Koine Greek. Anyways, and I remember during one of my classes, I was transcribing the whole Matthew 16, 18, 19, and I believe I took that up, because we were going around the class picking out scripture verses, which ones to transcribe. And I chose Matthew 16, 18, and 19, I believe. And anyways, I transcribed it, the whole Petros, Petra, and anyways, I brought this up about I brought this concept up of the whole Petros debate in Protestant community about what does Petros mean, and I brought up the subject that it's small rock, Petros means small rock. And anyways, I brought this up to my professor, and he's like, this is a biblical language class, not a theological class. So anyways, that kind of threw me off too. I was like, okay. Anyways, after I transcribed Matthew 16, 19, what got me thinking about this whole issue, because he said, on you, and I will give you the keys of the kingdom. I will give you. It's singular in Greek. It's not plural. It's I give you. Who was he saying this all to? He was saying it to Peter. And this all was coming at me at the same time. That's why it's.
Were you able to connect that at the time? You probably couldn't connect that to the Catholic
I
faith
came
at
to a
that point.
conclusion at this
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
that he gave the Peters the keys. I
Mhm.
understood that. He gave Peter the keys. But what does the keys mean?
Sure.
And that was one thing that got me thinking about this. And I was researching this, and my grades were affected by this too. I ended up with, I wasn't, it was like a 3.5 GPA at that, for that quarter or semester. Anyways, it affected my grades, not in a catastrophic way, but it was affecting my grades because I was researching what the keys meant and what it sounded Catholic to me at this time. Because why would he say on Petros, I'll build my Petra, my church, on this rock I'll build my church. And I knew that he gave Peter the keys. what this keys all entailed. I came finally read some it was interesting. I had to go to Catholic sources in order to understand all this. Um Isaiah 22:22. And that got me thinking that Peter was the rock that Christ was saying this to. Because how can you separate it? Because the only way you can do it is if you call, and on this, and I was thinking in my head, I'm not meaning to say this meaning to Peter, and on this numbskull, I'll build my church, and I will give this numbskull the keys. I don't understand that. Why would he give this numbskull the keys? Anyways, that's kind of what my whole thinking at this time. He gave this numbskull the keys. That's just my own personal understanding.
Yeah.
Just what I was thinking at this time. I understand that it was Peter. So I came to the conclusion that Peter was the head of the church at that time. Evidently, they fell into some sort of heresy. And I kind of fell in the whole Protestant mentality that they fell into heresy around 300 AD, with Constantine, all this stuff. I also was delving into some of the church fathers like Ignatius of Antioch at this time. I wrote some papers that sounded Catholic at this time. In my last systematic theology class, I came to the conclusion that I agreed with Catholic ecclesiology. I agreed with them. I don't know if you know what ecclesiology, I'm sure you know what ecclesiology. Anyways, how church structure, how they structure their church. I agreed with Catholic ecclesiology, and what their whole understanding of this whole church. It was Catholic. I knew that, but that was something I agreed with. I graduated during that time in 2006. I also decided that I could not be a youth minister in the Assembly of God anymore because I had so many doubts of the Assembly of God at this time because they didn't even have anything that I could go off on their understanding of marriage, contraception, all this stuff. They had nothing clear about this. I knew I couldn't be a minister in this. I got this time, so I switched majors from youth ministry to youth development. And I graduated with youth development degree. And anyways, this leads up to I graduated. I was involved with this ministry that was reaching out to the local homeless people, the drug addicted, and they hired me on as an assistant pastor there. I in 2008 I graduated in the fall 2007. I was pastor at this church for a year. And in 2008, I remember, if you remember the 2008 financial crisis in America, the 2008 financial crisis put a damper on the financial means of this organization helping to pay me. No one was donating to this organization. Anyways, they laid me off in 2009, January 2009. During this time, I was also questioning my whole experience in the Protestant community. I picked up a job at the public schools there in Minneapolis with kids that were first generation college bound students, and I was tutoring them in a Socratic method teaching. I don't know if you're from anything about that. I stayed with them until the July about of 2009. And also at this time, I applied for the local AmeriCorps that was working with kids that were the same kids I was reaching out to at ISIS at this church. This AmeriCorps, they reached out to kids that were struggling in school. A lot of them were low income students that were living in poverty. Same kids that I was working with, many of the same kids that I was working with in the public schools that I was working with and at the church I was in. Um, same kids, same kids. I did 2 years with the AmeriCorps, and during my last um, year with the AmeriCorps, halfway through, I started experiencing neurological issues. Um, my balance was starting to become really affected. Just like I had to get around the last two quarters of my time with the AmeriCorps, I had to get around utilizing a cane, and it was my neurolog. I was getting experiencing hand tremors. My speech was becoming slower, because I was having a hard time communicating at this time. Um, and these neurological issues got worse and worse over the next year. It got so bad that I was living in the third story of an apartment complex at this time, and I couldn't get up and down the stairs anymore. Um, Neurological issues were hampering everything. I decided, well, I was getting no answers with the hospital that I during this time, and there's just so much. And I decided to move back home in 2010, or no, 2011. On September 11th, 2011, I decided to move back home. That's my own personal 9/11, and figure out what was going on with my neurological issues. And anyways, I was seeing at HCMC or the hospital I was being cared for at. They had a neurological department. They had a gastroenterology department. Anyways, I was seeing them, and I was getting no answers of why this neurological issue was hurting me or hampering all my functions. And my speech was becoming quite affected at this time. It still is. You can't tell. What was going on is I was experiencing vitamin E deficiency. I don't know if you know anything about vitamin E, but it's one of the most powerful antioxidants in the vitamin um, mineral every oral way of obtaining vitamin E. Anyways, what this lack of vitamin E was doing, it was causing oxidative damage to my cerebellum. And this oxidative damage was causing the nerves in my cerebellum to not function correctly. So my hand tremors were getting worse because the nerves were becoming damaged. My speech was becoming due to the same issues. My vision was starting to become affected as well. All this led up to me becoming so malnourished. I had to go and find my answers at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And they knew my background. I had short bowel syndrome. That's what the 95% of my small bowel was removed. It's basically it caused short bowel syndrome, which is a rare syndrome in the United States. Only 4,000 adults in the United States have this. There's around 25,000 in total, but the majority of them are children, and they die because of this. Anyway, so how I made it to adulthood is a miracle in itself. they put me on parental nutrition. Came they under they were kind of astonished I wasn't put on IV nutrition earlier. The IV nutrition is kept in that fridge behind me. The neurological issues they persisted on, but they were becoming alleviated with this IV nutrition. And I became well enough again in 2014 to start tutoring at the local ALC, the one that I attended in high school. I said, well, I'm going to help kids that are struggling. Same with how I struggled, you know. Anyways, 2 years prior to 2014, 2012, after I moved home, I started to really question the whole concept of suffering. And I've delved into many different theologians at this time, like C.S. Lewis, The Problem of Pain. Even delved into some open theistic type teaching of Greg Boyd. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but anyways, the whole concept of suffering was bothering me quite severely. And anyways, so I was researching on my time that I was, I'd research on the computer, look at different concepts. I'd order books. I would, just try and become as knowledgeable as I can. And then I came across the concept of a Catholic teaching on suffering, about the whole concept of redemptive suffering, and it really started to make a little sense. And anyway, so in 2014, as I was saying, I was just starting to tutor kids once again. And the following Sunday, since I figured I was good enough to go back to and start tutoring kids, I'd go back to church. And this whole concept of suffering got me thinking. I decided one Sunday morning I'd visit the local parish and speak to a priest after Mass. On my way there, I started having this whole Protestant animosity to the Catholic Church. And anyways, I was a block away, and I saw this United Methodist Church, and decided to veer off and attend service there. And I ended up going there, anyways, just thinking, well, what do the Catholics know about this whole thing? So anyways, I stopped there and I spoke with the assistant pastor after the service, and I brought up my issues, and he said, oh, the head pastor here, he's an ordained Assembly of God preacher. And since I came from the Assembly of God background, I was like, okay, what's he doing in the United Methodist Church? Anyways, so I came back the following week, and we started off with a good conversation after his service. He preached a very good sermon that day. Anyways, and we kind of started off a friendship after that. It was really something else. Anyways, 2 weeks later, he gave me this book called Theology of Illness. It's by Jean-Claude Lorchette. He's an Orthodox priest, or Orthodox psychologist, I should say. And anyways, and then he started giving me these books on Catholicism, and I was like, okay. Anyways, and I'd go over to his house, we'd have lunch together, we'd just talk over things, theological things, and he was pretty smart. I brought up N.T. Wright, I don't know if you're familiar with N.T. Wright. Brought up this whole idea on their new perspective of Paul, and all this other issues, and anyways, we kind of hit it off, and we started getting kind of on the same page about the whole Catholic teachings on things. And it's kind of interesting because he left the church in I believe that fall of 2014. And could have been May, fall, somewhere around summertime. He ended up leaving the whole pastorate at the United Methodist Church, and he resigned from the Assembly of God, and he and his family decided to enter the Catholic Church. And he was a good friend of mine, and I was like, oh, well, okay. anyways, he was battling with the same issues I was, about the whole Catholic teachings and everything. He was further along in the whole researching of the Catholic Church than I was. He was probably 8 years into it. And anyways, I ended up going to his confirmation in 2016, met the local bishop, and anyways, him entering the church really got me thinking about the church, the Catholic Church, got me thinking about researching all these deeper theological issues, everything with the tribal Mary. During that time, before I left the pastorate at the Methodist Church, he gave me a book on Mary for Evangelicals. I don't know if you're familiar with that book. It's by Tim Perry. It basically goes over the whole teaching of Mary as the Ark of the New Covenant, Mary the New Eve. But it was all with an evangelical twist, but he kind of stuck to the whole Catholic teaching on the on Mary. Anyways, so this got the whole teaching on the Ark of the New Covenant really got me thinking about this. Because I do feel most of the Marian dogmas can be backed up by the whole teaching of the Mary as the Ark of the New Covenant. Anyways, Mary's perpetual virginity, well, the Ark needed to be pure. And just in the whole Revelation 11, end of 11:19, I believe the end of Revelation 11, and then Revelation 12.
Yeah.
It just all started fitting together so well. There's no way to deny it, And I kind of broke down in the end of 2016. I broke out the rosary. I started praying the rosary, and I just felt Mary's comfort during that time. It was really awkward. I was a Protestant, and anyways, I started really, it's a slow walk into the Catholic Church from the outside, from a Protestant background. Anyways, in 2017, I gained enough information that I was really considering about entering Catholic Church. I even told my grandma, who recently departed a couple years ago, that I was really considering entering the Catholic Church. And she was Catholic. She was my father's mother. Anyways, she looked at me with loving eyes and said, "You should." So, anyways, so that got me thinking about, and I was kind of hesitant on the whole concept because many of my family left the Catholic Church, and I was still holding out and hoped to find some sort of heresy that they've started promoting, but I couldn't find anything. It all was backed up by scripture, and I was also dialoguing with my friend that entered the Catholic Church. But this whole time we kind of kept up our relation. We'd have coffee every once in a while, and keep up call each other on the phone. Anyways, and I found out that he was seeking to become a priest in the Catholic Church.
Oh.
And that really got me thinking about this whole Catholic thing, And he was just so eloquent in the way he described the whole Catholic teaching. He's a lot more eloquent than I could ever be. Anyways, very knowledgeable guy. One, on the end of 2022, I started attending a mass every once in a while with him, and he would explain different concepts of the mass, even pointed out where the bishop blessed the church, that little square. And they kind of pinpointed where the church blessed the church, and everything just seemed to jive. And I was starting to get desperate, about fighting off this whole urge to enter the Catholic Church. And I recalled that the Catholic Church, actually one day I was online, I was reading on Twitter about this whole concept of ad orientem. It's toward the east, the priesthood faces toward the east. And I asked, and I texted him, and I was like, do all Catholic churches face toward the east? He said, well, yeah, that's kind of like the common thing, the Catholic churches face east. Anyways, there's a lot of issues. There's liturgical issues. I understand, like, kind of looking back at it. But anyways, he sent me this article by Catholic Culture Facing East. And it described the whole concept of the facing east. It says in the early church that all the Christians prayed toward the east. And Cyril and Basil, he actually said, well, this is kind of like that. That's from the beginning. This is how the Catholics prayed toward the east. And anyways, and then I got to the segment where it said that Perpetua entered in her whole commentary on her martyrdom, where she described her with 4 angels carrying her toward the east. And why this jived with me is because, like I've said in the past, that when I had my traumatic airbag accident, I died for 2 minutes. And during that time, I recall entering heaven toward the east. And when I entered heaven, I saw the throne right in front of me. The throne was right in front of me, and then I saw my grandfather, who was Catholic, come from the northeast. And he, I don't know how people communicate in heaven. It's like we know what's communicated. It's not. He looked at me, and I knew that I was supposed to follow him. And he brought me and he led me to the Lord, as to, and when I saw the Lord, he was shown like the transfiguration and just bright light. Anyways, and I looked back to see if my grandpa was still there. He wasn't there. This is all thing. Anyways, I recall Jesus looked at me and he said, live life to the fullest. And how this all comes together is the Catholic teaching on suffering. Christ invites us to suffer with him. And living life to the fullest. I know. There's healing. I know there's healing. I believe that with all my heart. But we're called to suffer with Christ. And anyways, this is all things I've kind of meshed together. And then once all this stuff started entering my brain, I heard a locution from God. He said, are you still going to deny me? And that, how I took it is am I still going to deny him in the Eucharist? I can't deny him anymore because that was true. And And I broke down. I started weeping, after I read all that, and I had that God spoke to me and decided then I'd go to church that Sunday and make an arrangement to meet with the priest. I was, like I said, I was baptized in the Catholic Church, so I was already in the church, but I just needed to have my first reconciliation and enter a church. So I made an arrangement. February 1st of 2023, I entered the church. And God's been doing miracles ever since. My friend now, he is an ordained priest. He was ordained last year and found out a couple weeks ago he's going to be my priest. So it's kind of interesting that he was my Protestant pastor one time and now he's my priest. But it's more than that. It's like he's a friend. So it's interesting how that all works. It's like grace of God is there. Anyways, I think that's about it. But
Wow. Scott, fantastic. So, here's a question. What you might say, Eddie, it's obvious after sharing that story. What motivates you every day?
serve God. It just wasn't my spirit. So and help as many people as I can. I guess it's just kind of like a desire was put in me. So
Have you shared this story before?
yeah, I've shared a couple times in my Protestant journey,
Mm-hmm.
times in my Catholic journey already. But
Yeah.
anyways,
I think it's really important, obviously, to share it, specifically the before the locution, the dream. I'm sorry, it was what happened when you had died for those 2 minutes, right?
yeah,
That part of the story is so I'm having such difficulty comprehending that.
it's
To
difficult for me.
Yeah, I mean, when we read about the transfiguration, it's overwhelming. When you if you do any Lectio Divina and you place yourself at the bottom of the hill looking up, right? But for you to experience that in the midst of something so horrific in your life, 16, right?
Yeah,
16? So now almost 30 years ago is when that happened.
yeah, pretty
So
close.
what was that?
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Yeah. I thank God for your courage, perseverance, honesty, trust, just this beauty of the faith, beauty of surrender, all these things that I sense in you. God has graced you with that clearly. And I want to encourage you to continue sharing your story as broadly as possible so that people can understand specifically the concept of redemptive suffering. I think that is unbelievable, and I think more and more people need to hear about that as theology and how you can partner with Jesus in that walk.
He invites us to.
Yeah.
Could I say one thing about my grandma? I know she was Catholic. She'd
Yes.
always say she would always watch mass every day and pray rosary every night. She'd always say, "Oh, I have to pray my rosary tonight." She'd always say that to me. And anyways, so there's power in prayer too. So
There's
I know
power in prayer. Yeah.
I know she hasn't given up praying for her family.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What is your message to the audience? What would you like them to take away from your testimony?
The Catholic Church is the true church. That's just what I am saying. Everything backs it up.
Yep.
I mean, it took me 20 years about to enter the church. I don't want anybody to wait that long, as long as I did.
Well said, Scott. Absolutely right. You're like, I want them on the fast track. They so they don't have to spend all the hours researching like I did. But yeah, absolutely fascinating, Scott. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for your strength of spirit and your poverty of spirit as well. Really appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Well, God bless you, everyone. Please share this episode, and I'll end it there. Please share this episode. Until next time, take care and God bless.